There are two ways to win in this world. The first way is force, raw power, domination, the lion's way. The second way is deception, strategy, misdirection, the fox's way. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception." And in those 11 words, he revealed the single most powerful secret that the world's most dangerous minds have always known. Force makes enemies. Deception makes believers. Force requires constant effort. Deception, once deployed, works while you sleep. Today, MindShade exposes exactly how this principle works, how it has been used throughout history, how it is being used on you right now, and how you can use it to protect yourself. First, understand what Machiavelli actually meant by deception. He was not advocating for lies told out of weakness. He was not describing the desperate manipulation of the small-minded. He was describing something far more sophisticated, far more powerful, far more dangerous. Machiavelli's deception is strategic misdirection, the art of making others believe what serves your purpose while concealing what does not. It is the difference between a chess player who telegraphs every move and a chess player who makes you think they are playing a completely different game. The first player fights with force. They play openly. They show their strategy. They rely on being stronger. The second player fights with deception. They play with concealment. They show you what they want you to see. They rely on being smarter. Machiavelli observed, across decades of watching real power operate, that the second player wins, almost every time. Why does deception defeat force so consistently? Because force is expensive. Maintaining force requires constant energy, resources, and vigilance. An army must be fed. A bully must keep bullying. A dominator must keep dominating. The moment force pauses, the moment the powerful person looks away, resistance resurfaces. Force never actually wins. It only temporarily suppresses. But deception, true strategic deception, changes what people believe. And beliefs require no force to maintain. When you make someone believe something, they enforce it themselves. They defend it themselves. They spread it themselves. This is the terrifying efficiency of deception as a power tool. It outsources the work of control to the controlled themselves. Machiavelli did not just observe this. He understood it at a level that no political thinker before him had articulated so clearly. Let us look at history's greatest practitioners of this principle. Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese military strategist, wrote centuries before Machiavelli, "All warfare is based on deception." The greatest military victories in history were not won by the strongest army. They were won by the army that made the enemy believe something false and act on that false belief. The Trojan Horse, perhaps the most famous act of strategic deception in all of human history. The Greeks could not breach the walls of Troy by force. For 10 years they tried. For 10 years they failed. So they changed their approach entirely. They made the Trojans believe the horse was a gift, a peace offering, a symbol of surrender. The Trojans themselves willingly, enthusiastically brought the instrument of their own destruction through their own gates. No force was required at the decisive moment. The Trojans did the work themselves. This is Machiavelli's principle in its purest historical form. Force tried for 10 years and failed. Deception succeeded in a single night. Now let us look at another master of this principle, Cardinal Richelieu, the 17th century French statesman who ruled France from behind the throne for nearly 2 decades. Richelieu never commanded armies directly. He never fought battles personally. He was a cardinal, a man of the church, seemingly a man of peace. But through strategic deception, through making enemies believe he was weaker than he was, through making allies believe they needed him more than they did, he controlled the most powerful nation in Europe. He played multiple sides simultaneously. He made each faction believe they were his primary ally. He concealed his true agenda behind a mask of religious humility. Machiavelli wrote, "No enterprise is more likely to succeed than one concealed from the enemy until it is ripe for execution."
Richelieu lived this principle more completely than perhaps any figure in European history. Force would have made him enemies. Deception made him indispensable. Now let us bring this into the modern world. In business, the companies that dominate entire industries rarely do so through raw force. They do so through strategic misdirection, through making competitors look in the wrong direction, through making customers believe in a narrative that serves the company's interests. Apple did not win through having the most powerful computers. They won through making people believe that their products represented something about identity, about who you are as a person. The product was real, but the belief being sold was strategic, carefully crafted, deliberately positioned. While competitors competed on specifications, on force, Apple competed on perception, on deception in the most sophisticated sense. The result? The most valuable company in human history, built not through force, but through the most elegant strategic misdirection in corporate history. In politics, Machiavelli's principle operates on a scale most people refuse to acknowledge. Political power is almost never maintained through force alone. Even the most authoritarian regimes rely fundamentally on manufactured belief. They make people believe that resistance is impossible, that the current order is natural, that alternatives are dangerous. These are not facts. These are constructed beliefs, strategic deceptions deployed at massive scale. The most powerful political operators in history understood you do not need to dominate people's bodies if you can dominate their minds. And dominating minds requires not force, but deception, narrative, belief construction. Machiavelli watched this operating in Renaissance Italy and wrote it down honestly, for the first time in political history. Now, let us talk about how this principle operates in everyday life, in your life. In every negotiation, the person who reveals their true position first loses. Showing your real bottom line, revealing how much you need the deal, demonstrating desperation or eagerness, these are all forms of force. They say, "Here is everything I have, now overpower me if you can." The Machiavellian negotiator does the opposite. They conceal their true position. They create the impression of alternatives they may not have. They make the other party uncertain, and uncertainty creates leverage. This is not dishonesty for its own sake. It is strategic misdirection in service of a desired outcome. Every master negotiator in history, in business, in diplomacy, in personal relationships, has understood this principle intuitively. In relationships, the person who shows all their cards immediately, who reveals every vulnerability, who demonstrates that they have no other options, is operating through force. They are relying on the other person being too good, too kind, too loyal to exploit that vulnerability. And sometimes that works, but it is a bet on someone else's character, not a strategy based on your own power.
The Machiavellian principle in relationships does not mean lying to the people you love. It means maintaining some mystery, some independence, some concealed depth that makes you permanently interesting, permanently uncertain, permanently worth pursuing. Certainty kills attraction. Mystery sustains it. This is strategic deception in its most human and natural form. Machiavelli also wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." This is the complete principle. Not deception alone, not force alone. The complete Machiavellian is both. The intelligence to recognize and deploy deception when it is more efficient, and the strength to use force when deception alone is insufficient. But always, always attempt deception first, because force is the expensive option. Force leaves damage. Force creates enemies. Deception, when it works, leaves no trace, no enemy, no damage, only a result. Now let us talk about how to protect yourself from this principle being used against you. Because understanding that this principle exists and is being deployed constantly is the first and most critical protection.
When someone is unusually charming, unusually agreeable, unusually accommodating, ask yourself, what are they concealing? Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." The gap between appearance and reality in any person, in any organization, in any political system, is where strategic deception lives. Train yourself to look for that gap. Ask not just what you are being shown, but what you are not being shown. What narrative is being constructed? Who benefits from you believing it? Protection. Step 1. Never make decisions based on emotional pressure alone. Deception almost always works through emotion, through urgency, through fear, through flattery. Slow down. Think. Ask what you are not seeing. Protection. Step 2. Assume everyone has a concealed agenda. This is not paranoia. This is Machiavellian realism. Even good people operate from self-interest. Understanding that and asking what their interest is protects you. Protection. Step 3. Never reveal your full hand. In any negotiation, any relationship, any competition, always maintain some concealed position. Always preserve some uncertainty about your true priorities and limits. Protection. Step 4. Study the gap between words and actions. Words are the primary tool of deception. Actions, over time, reveal what words conceal. Watch what people do consistently, not what they say occasionally. Protection. Step 5. Become the fox. Learn to recognize traps, not to become permanently suspicious, but to become permanently aware. The person who understands deception is infinitely harder to deceive. Machiavelli was writing a warning as much as he was writing a manual. He understood that the world operates on these principles, whether we acknowledge it or not. The person who refuses to understand how deception works does not thereby live in a world without deception. They simply live in a world where they are the most convenient target. Knowledge of this principle does not make you a manipulator. It makes you a survivor, a strategist, someone who can navigate the real world as it actually is rather than as you wish it were. Machiavelli gave us this knowledge 500 years ago. Most people still refuse to look at it clearly. But you, watching this right now, are choosing to look clearly. Let us recap everything we have covered. Deception defeats force because force is expensive and temporary, while deception changes beliefs which are self-sustaining. History's greatest victories, from Troy to Renaissance Europe to modern corporate dominance, were won through strategic deception, not raw force. In everyday life, in negotiations, relationships, and competition, concealing your true position and creating productive uncertainty is more powerful than revealing everything and relying on others' goodness. Protection from this principle requires training yourself to look for what is being concealed, not just what is being shown. And becoming the fox, learning to recognize and understand strategic deception, is the only reliable protection against it. Machiavelli wrote this truth 500 years ago. The world has not changed. Human nature has not changed. The fox still outwits the lion every single time. Now you know why. This is what MindShade does every week. We take the most dangerous truths about human psychology and power, and we expose them completely, so that you are never the Trojan who opens the gate, never the Julius Caesar who trusted the wrong people, never the person who lost because they fought with force when deception was available. Subscribe to MindShade right now. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the world more clearly, because Machiavelli was right about everything. And the sooner you accept that, the safer and the more powerful you become.